Dr. Clare Daly.
Well, I tell you, in terms of whether people would be fooled more by you or Sinn Féin, I tell you, I don't have any problem with the answer to that. You're not exactly riding high in the credibility stakes at the moment. But in any case, my question relates to the fact and flows from the discussion last time round on Minister's questions in relation to the continued use of Shannon Airport for US aircraft. And again, the Defence Forces were present on the 24th of April and indeed on the 30th of April and on a number of occasions in March. So I'm wondering, given that the Minister told us last time around that the activity of this aircraft had nothing to do with breaching our neutrality or carrying ammunitions or arms, did the Irish Army patrol units who were present get any information as to actually what they were doing there?
Minister number 3.
An Garda Síochána has the primary responsibility for law and order, including the protection of the internal security of the state. Among the roles assigned to the Defence Forces is the provision of aid to the civil power, or ATCP, which in practice means to assist An Garda Síochána when requested to do so. There is ongoing and close liaison between An Garda Síochána and the Defence Forces regarding security matters. The Defence Forces have deployed personnel to Shannon Airport in response to requests for support from An Garda Síochána since the 5th of February 2003. With respect to the 24th of April 2014, requests for Defence Force support was received from An Garda Síochána and troops were deployed. The Defence Forces have no information in relation to extra fuel tanks on the aircraft.
Thanks, Ceann Comhairle. Minister, I don't think you realise the seriousness of these questions. The US aircraft in question was a US Navy cargo transport plane operated by the VR-62 Fleet Logistics Unit. Now, this isn't any ordinary aircraft. It is especially fitted with special fuel tanks and has been previously associated with special ventures like the one which took out Osama bin Laden. And this vehicle in particular actually was used as part of a joint Australia-US military exercise in 2013. Yet you continue to state that these aircraft are not engaged in military activity when they land in Shannon. Now, what I want you to tell us is if they're not carrying arms or ammunition or soldiers on their way to or from military operations or military exercises, then what are they doing at Shannon Airport? Why would the United States government spend money on very expensive flights across the Atlantic several times a month if they're not doing so? Could you shed any light on that situation? The reality is, Minister, there's no other explanation other than the fact that they are landing as part of military activity.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Firstly, I know that the Deputy may be a fan of Osama bin Laden, but I'm not quite sure what relevance Osama has to this matter at all. I've given the Deputy the information that is available to me. I've no further information I can add in response to the question that the Deputy has raised. In the context of this particular flight, my information simply is that An Garda Síochána requested the assistance of the Defence Forces. The Defence Forces provided that assistance, and I have no information in relation to the further flight plans of the particular aircraft the Deputy mentions.
Again, the Minister returns to form and tries to mislead the House. I, of course, abhor the activities of Osama bin Laden. The point being made was this isn't an aircraft which brings soldiers on their holidays. It is a specially modified aircraft for engagement in military exercises. And the idea that you could say with certainty that it hasn't been so engaged when your Defence Forces personnel have consistently failed to examine them, to be honest with you, Minister, beggars belief. There are no Russian aircraft, there are no Chinese warplanes in Shannon Airport, only US ones. And wouldn't you think, by joining the dots, given what you see what's happening around the globe with the build-up of military aggression in the Ukraine, for example, and in Syria, that the US establishment mightn't be wasting their money on sending aircraft on their holidays, that they might have some other purpose involved, and you've some neck in answering that that is not the case when you haven't taken the trouble to actually examine the situation.
Final reply, Minister.
I think the build-up of military aggression in the Ukraine, I think, is of particular concern to the members of the European Union. That Russian troops have been exercising close to the border of Ukraine, and that there's various serious difficulties in Ukraine. I don't know whether that's the aggression the Deputy has in mind. The Deputy then makes reference to Syria. Now, I don't understand what relevance this flight landing in Shannon Airport has to the dreadful tragedy that's being played out in Syria, where it's estimated over 130,000 people have lost their lives. Many more have been seriously injured. There's in nearly 2.3 million people who are refugees living in refugee camps outside Syria. There's a horrendous civil war going on, during which it seems clear that the ruler of Syria continues to use either chemical or biological weapons against his own population. You have fundamentalists of the Al-Qaeda type who have been responsible for killing large numbers of people, as has the regime, and you have a warfare going on between the groupings who are contesting against the Assad regime. So what's happening in Syria is appalling. It's atrocious. I know that if the Americans tried to intervene to bring about peace, they'd be immediately condemned by the Deputy. But what's happening in Syria has got to do with the landing of an aircraft in Shannon Airport. It escapes me entirely.
Thank you, Minister.